Hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to go over patches 14.9, 10, and 11 heading into what will be the beginning of the LPL summer placements or whatever the hell that's going to be. We'll talk about that on Friday, this upcoming weekend. Looking at the patches relative to all the teams in the four major regions, so that's 45 teams between the four. There are 16 on the board, the ones that are most affected by the patch, whether positively in this side or negatively on this side. Technically, only one team actually comes out negative, but there are 6 teams that are coming out at net zero. The way I look at the patches, and some people don't like that, but the way I look at it is, if Riot's saying it's a buff, it's a buff. If they're saying it's a nerf, it's a nerf. If we look at the adjustments, if they're calling it a buff, it's a buff. If they're calling it a nerf, it's a nerf. I believe that placebo is a thing. Whether a buff or a nerf actually statistically matters is irrelevant to me when I make this content. This is whether or not teams are more likely to pick these champions or not going forward. If you've watched my videos over the last couple months and even many years ago when it came to patches, we're looking back at how the patch also has changed the meta. Each time we've seen and identified a couple to a handful or even more of champions that have significant presence change as a result of a patch due to being buffed or nerfed. So more often than not, despite people saying that a patch won't actually change anything, they always do something, and it's just kind of silly to go against it and say that it's not going to change anything. So on here, we have the champions that I believe a team are buffed by them being buffed and then nerfed by being nerfed. The way I determined this is based on Season 12 to now in Tier 1 games, whether a player played a champion at least 4% of games, so 1 out of 25, give and take for changes in meta, many years to go over. And then a nerf is, to me, if a player's been playing that champion this year, so 8% of games, so 1 out of every 12 of this spring split thus far. So we have a few LPL teams to start us off. These teams all over here are +5. So there are 5 more champions that are buffed than there were nerfed based on the champion pools and usage by those teams over the last couple years. So with Weibo, we have Kennen and Gnar, both buffed. Breathe plays both those champions quite a bit. If you want to check this out, I'm going to upload on the Discord. Last time I didn't for MSI, and I meant to. I'm going to upload the percentages so you can look at them yourself. In the jungle, Tarzan, big Sejuani enjoyer. Everybody plays Sejuani. It's interesting, the couple players that don't, Zhao Feng, we get over here, didn't play a single Sejuani game this past spring. Also, Corki mid for Xiaohu. Corki is buffed, whether or not you think it's an AD carry buff or a mid lane buff, it's been buffed. AD carry, Caitlyn. Light does play Caitlyn. And then Lulu and Nami both buffed for Crisp. In terms of nerfs, Ari and Talia both used by Xiaohu, at least 8% of games this spring. Ultra Prime, yes, a team that everybody certainly cares about, coming out positively. Gnar and Sejuani. So Gnar, in the case of both Decade and Qingtian, they played quite a bit of Gnar last year. This year and last year. Sejuani for Hacker. Karma and Corki for Yukai. Played both champions. Smolder and Caitlyn both played by Doggo and Zhao Yuji. Zhao Yuji has been brought in to compete with Doggo for the AD carry spot. And then Wei was nerfed. Yukai played quite a bit of Wei, did not play a ton of Ari and Talia. Thunder Talk. So Kennen and Gnar, both for Hoya, were buffed. Sejuani buffed for Bechuan. Corki for UCal. Smolder for 1XN. And then Lulu Nami for Chow Chow. Talia and Wei both nerfed for UCal. In the LEC, we have a couple teams. Carmine Corp come out 5-0 in this one. No nerfs, but buffs. So Kana, over his last couple years, played quite a bit of Gnar in top lane. Sejuani for closer. with the 100 Thieves. Upset plays quite a bit of Caitlyn, and Targamas plays Lulu and Nami. Rogue, another great LEC team this past split. Finn, Gangplank buffs. He is a beneficiary of Gangplank, a big Gangplank enjoyer, more than the average top laner. Gnar, also buff. Sejuani for Marcoon, Corki for Larson, Smolder and Caitlyn both for comp. By the way, when I did Smolder, I did 8% because it's only been, out for this split. Hell, it should have been even probably higher because it wasn't out the entire year. But Smolder and Caitlyn. And then Nami and Lulu both buffed. Zoli's plays both of those champions. So he played both of them this past split. And then in terms of nerfs, Ari and Wei for Larson and Blitzcrank also nerfed in the case of Zoli's. A handful of LCK teams come out +5, so the LCK really loves this patch in terms of champion usage. D plus Kia come out 5-0. Gnar for Kingen, Sejuani for Lucid, Karma for Showmaker, and then Lulu Nami for Kellen. So that's that's actually Karma support. Despite Showmaker having like a penta, I believe, on Karma, it didn't come out over 4% over his last couple of years, where other players it did. But Kellen played quite a bit of Karma support. So 3 times buff for Kellen. HLE, so Hanwha Life, Gangplank and Gnar for Doran. Sejuani for Peanut. Karma buffed for both Zeka and for Delight. Delight also benefits from the Lulu Nami buffs. Viper was not a Smolder or a Caitlyn enjoyer. Ari and Talia both nerfed for Zeka. KT Rolster, Gnar buffed for Perfect, Sejuani for Pioshik. Nothing for BDD in terms of the positive side of things. I'm sure he can play Corki and things like that, but he doesn't play it often relative to everybody else. Smolder and Caitlyn both buffed in the case of Deft. Lulu Nami for Barrel, and then Talia was nerfed, and BDD played a lot of Talia. Nongshim Red Force, this gets a little hairy here. So, Sejuani buffed for Sylvie. Karma buffed for both. Trying to think. I believe Karma was buffed for Call Me. I believe Fisher played Corki. One played one played the other, and they're battling for that starting spot. That's why it's on there. I guess you technically, if you want to go back and forth and have a 6-man roster, it would be beneficial to have one play one and one play the other in I guess some crazy 6-man roster scenario. I mean, Nongshim's roster very well could end up being like that. It's a damn mess. But Karma also buffed in the case of Peter, big Enchanter enjoyer at support. Smolder buffed for Jiwoo, and then Lulu Nami both buffed for Peter as well. Talia and Wei both nerfed. Talia was, I believe Talia was nerfed for Call Me, and Wei was nerfed for Fisher. T1, Gnar buff for Zayu, Sejuani for Owner, Corki for Faker, Caitlyn for Guma. If there's a Caitlyn buff, I mean T1 Caitlyn is insane. Lulu Nami both buffed for Keria. Although they aren't the best champions for him, they are buffed and he does pick them. And then Talia nerfed for Faker. Now on the sad face side, we have 3 LEC teams. BDS comes out at net 0. Gnar buffed for Adam, Sejuani for Sheo, and Lulu for Labrav. But Olaf nerfs. That's going to affect Adam. Talia is going to affect Nuke, and Blitzcrank will affect Labrav, so net 0. Mad Lions, Gnar for Mirwin, Sejuani for Elyoya, and Karma for Frescowi. And then they face Ari and Talia nerfs towards Frescowi, and Blitzcrank nerfs towards Alvaro. SK, because Rahel and now Luan is going to be his name. I only saw it briefly in the chat. It's not Double H anymore. It's Luan or something of the sort. Gnar buffed for Irrelevant. Sejuani for Isma. But Ari and Talia nerfed for Niski, and because Rahel and the support have no tier 1 games to really go over, Rahel has like a handful, just filling in for Deft last year, and maybe even during COVID he may have got a game or two in. But otherwise, there's nothing really to go over for them. And now, LPL. Rare Atom come out net 0, which Rare Atom need all the help they can get. Nar buffed for Zhaozhu, Sejuani for Zhao Hao, Quirky for Vikla, Nami for Zhui, who joins the team after being with Ultra Prime in spring. And then nerfs, Ari, Talia, Wei for Vikla. So Vikla got triple nerfed on this one. And then Jinx, also nerfed. Asun played quite a bit of Jinx in spring. One of a couple players that played a lot of Jinx to actually be nerfed by that nerf because they relied on it more than 8% of their games. LCS, so the only LCS team on the board, 100 Thieves. They come out net 0, and you're going to say, where are the other 7? Well, they're in between 4 and 1, so I guess it came out positively. Sejuani buffed for River, Lulu for Isla, and then nerfs to Quids, Ari, and Talia. All the other champions didn't meet the percentage threshold. And then the only team that comes out negative are OMG. And I guess I'm reaching a bit when I do this in the case of Starry, but I am anyways. So, buffs. Nar for Cube, Corky for Angel, and Lulu for PP God. But then there are 4 nerfs, so they come out negative 1. Ari, Talia, Wei for Angel. So just like Vikla, Angel is facing a triple nerf with the Ari, Talia, and Wei nerfs. And then Jinx. Starry played, I think, 10 games, and one of them was on Jinx or something like that. So in the end, unfortunately, I mean, if he might have played 7 games and one was on Jinx. Which one played 7 games? It was Starry, and who's the other young 80 carry that played towards the end? It's going to come to me right away after I turn off the video. I'm trying to think. They're going to start. Maybe it was Starry and he played just 7 games. Quantum played 10. I end up having to... KDF, originally in my sheet, I'm going to have to alter it. We're at net 0, but now they're positive 1 because Seraphine got buffed, and Bulldog is a rarity that he actually played like 12% of his games this past split on Seraphine. So I guess a Seraphine buff, even if it's support or 80 carry, I don't think it was specified in the patch notes what the intention was, at least on Twitter. Usually I look at Riot Froxon and just try and see what the vibe is and what they're trying to get out of these patches. But so KDF ended up +1. So, like I said in the beginning of the video, keep in mind this is not about specific stats. You can say, oh, that nerf doesn't matter or that buff doesn't matter. But in the end, when we look back at the patches, when we look back at when we go to what will be 14.12 in the 4 major regions, and I look back at what 14.11 looked like relative to 14.8, we are going to see a difference in percentages of presence, and that's just, I think, a fact of the matter. Not trying to be a fortune teller, but this whole split, me doing this, has kind of shown that there are changes each patch. So, thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, become a YouTube supporter, and hope to see you again tomorrow.